The Battlefields of Acheron. Acheron is the lawful evil, lawful neutral plane, between the evil bureaucracy of the Nine Hells and the strict order of Mechanus. It is the most lawful of the evil planes, stressing order over evil, the group over the individual. It is home to those who inflict evil as an afterthought, between the desire for organization and order. Each layer of Acheron consists of metal blocks that float in a void colliding with each other, each time echoing loud metallic booms throughout the plane. The cubes are pitted and scarred with craters, cracks, and dents from the many collisions, although they always fracture and rust in straight lines and at right angles, due to the orderly nature of Acheron. The plane is not made to support life, being made only out of solid geometric shapes. Gravity conforms to the shape of each block, always pointing to the center, so an army can march on any side of a shape, gravity shifting as they round the edge of a cube and arrive on another face. The plane is lit by a gray light that fluctuates between bright moonlight and a dark, cloudy day. The source of this light has never been found. Now, it never specifies what color the actual void is. However, if the plane is lit by a gray light, one could assume that the void around you would also be gray. However, on the fourth layer of Acheron, Ocanthus, it specifically states that the void is snow white. So what color the void is on the other three layers is a little unclear. However, maybe it starts off gray and then gets lighter and lighter as you go deeper into the layers until you get to the last layer where it's white, but that's just pure conjecture. On the first two layers, Avalas and Thuldanin, the masses slam into each other, crushing anyone between. You have about a day or two from the time you see the other cube until it will collide, giving just enough time to escape. Any structure built on the surface is eventually crushed by these collisions, so most strongholds are built underground in caverns. These caverns are usually square, just like the cubes themselves, and the tunnels that lead to them are always circular and about 20 feet in diameter. These tunnels are crucial as a food source, supporting humid, fertile mushroom beds and something called provender stones, a woody, black, earthy fruit which are edible but only barely. They are square, black blocks that grow indefinitely, some having reached the size of houses. Some armies have built mobile fortresses so that they can have strongholds on the surface without fear of them being crushed. These are called Hassatoriums, named after the ancient race that first created them, the Hassator. They are products of ancient necromancy, bizarre architecture, and stone masonry. The walls are constructed of slaves and iron, half living, half metal, and constantly in pain. The slaves within drag iron ramparts and rough iron skids. Occasionally, one fails to keep pace and is crushed by the citadel, being smeared into rusty paste that smooths the progress of its onward movement. 8 of these are known to exist on Acheron, but many more have been found in the scrap heaps of Thuldanin. If a cube sails too long in the void without colliding with another, time will completely stop until it returns to the presence of other masses. There are many tales of long-forgotten armies returning centuries later as if nothing had changed. All of this information so far has been from 1st, 2nd, and 3rd edition, although most of the info was from 2nd. Now in 4th edition, they use the world axis cosmology and Acheron doesn't exist in it. There is a plane called Chernagar, which the book even says is similar to Acheron, and it does have quite a few similarities. It is a plane of constant war. Bane, the Orc Pantheon, and the Goblinoid Pantheon all dwell and battle here, and the Bladelings live here. However, its physical description is vastly different. There's no floating cubes of metal, no layers, it is just a badlands of jagged black rock, and that's basically it. It's honestly pretty lame if you ask me. Since it is so different on that front, and it isn't even called Acheron, I'm not going to be including any information from 4th edition in this video. In 5th edition, we get a whopping 4 sentences of lore, and it's basically the same as everything else, a plane of constant battle between orcs and goblins, and the ringing of colliding cubes. However, it does say that all 4 layers consist of big metal cubes, whereas in all the other editions, only the first 2 layers are cubes. Now let's discuss traveling on Acheron. How do you get to, from, and around the plane? So the river Styx runs through the first layer, Avalas, meandering from cube to cube by flowing down into a cavern and reappearing on another cube. According to 1st edition, it does not run through every cube on the layer. Since Avalas is the first layer, it is the layer that connects to the planes that border Acheron: the Astral Plane, the Outlands, Mechanus, and the Nine Hells. These planes are connected to Acheron by portals. Now, there are two kinds of these portals: tethered and free-floating. Tethered portals are anchored to a specific spot on a cube, meaning as the cube moves throughout the layer, the portal stays in the same spot on the cube, making them very reliable. Free-floating portals are anchored to a set point in space, meaning when a cube floats away, the portal remains behind in the void. Sometimes a cube even floats through a portal, making it inoperable until it's out. If one uses one of these portals, they slowly drift towards the nearest block, and unless the traveler can fly or the portal is very close to a block, they will land at dangerous speeds, taking 20 d6 points of damage. In 1st edition, there were only free-floating portals, but someone with an intelligence of 18 could make an intelligence check to discover the pattern the blocks in a specific region moved in, and then could use this information to access these portals easily. Now, these portals are spherical and are activated by touch. The sound it makes upon activation reveals its destination. A harmonious chord leads to Nirvana, a discordant one leads to Avernus and the Nine Hells, and a silent sphere leads the traveler to concordant opposition. Ones that connect to the astral and other layers of Acheron make a single note instead of a chord. The portal to the gate town Rigus moves between the Battle Cube, where the goblins and orcs dwell, the Blue Cube, and the Mercy Killer city of Vorkehon. The gate to Mechanus only exists in the mines of Marcelin or in Zoranor, the shadowed city of the Bladelings. Zoranor is rumored to have gates to Beator as well. The outskirts of Resounding Thunder are said to possess a gate to the Palace of Judgment in the Outlands. The cubes of Avalas are also riddled with portals that connect to other cubes that it has collided with. Eventually, all the cubes will connect to all others, and that's when the plane will dissolve or evolve into something else, according to some. According to 3rd edition, these portals are usually located at the mouths of caves. It doesn't say what they look like. I assume they are also spherical like all the other portals. Properties. So I've already talked about some properties, like time stopping on cubes that drift too far away, and then there are some properties specific to certain layers, like the blade storms of Ocanthus or the petrification of Thuldanin, and I will discuss those later when I get to those layers. This section will be about the general properties that affect the whole plane I couldn't fit elsewhere in the video. So, in 2nd edition, as always, there are a ton of magical properties that only affect arcane spellcasters. Divine spellcasters are unaffected by these and are simply a level lower for each plane between Acheron and the plane their god dwells on. Acheron is a place of, quote, order and precision. No half measures, no gray, no maybes or power sharing. Every magical action has a magical reaction. What one mage gains, another must lose, end quote. Whenever a new soul enters Acheron, another must die. For each ice storm, a firestorm manifests elsewhere. For each healing, someone suffers. Whenever these occur, a reflection in the form of a crystal appears from the spell's effect and whizzes off to go and manifest. These can be caught with a spectral hand, Bigby's hand, and certain magical gloves. These can be used to reverse the spells that created them. So, someone polymorphed could be reverted back if they touch the reflection created from said polymorph spell. Someone frozen by a cone of cold would be unfrozen and regain any hit points lost. However, these reflections only last an hour. Casting spells with material or somatic components when two cubes collide is impossible, and these reverberations and aftershocks can last as long as an hour. It doesn't explain why this is the case. I guess the reverberations in your body would cause the hand movements from your somatic components to be imprecise from all the shaking, but I'm not really sure why material components are affected. Anyway, let's move on to the spell schools. Conjuration Summoning. Creatures summoned in Acheron must obey the letter of any command, but they strive to avoid the spirit. Since summoned fiends, elementals, and other creatures cannot disobey, they are usually used as suicide shock troopers to break strong points. However, there is a price for perfect obedience. The caster must have a petitioner or planar in the summoned creature's place. This hostage trades places with the summoned creature, appearing wherever it was. In the case of summoned Batazu, the hostage normally dies. They are allowed a saving throw versus death to avoid this. If they succeed, then the caster must make a saving throw versus death or trade places instead, leaving the summoned creature free from any commands or restraints. If both the hostage and the caster succeed the saving throw, the spell fails. Divination magic cannot be used to spy on opposing forces, assuming the information has military significance. The plane forces careful scouting and encourages surprise attacks. Omens are common and are skewed to show the worst possible result. Positive or negative omens always apply to the entire group the caster is a part of, whether that be a party of adventurers or an army of thousands. Necromancy. Acheron is a good place for raising an army, so there is no limit to how many undead one can raise. Other forms of necromancy requires the caster to have a greater life force than the life force of his target. If he has more hit dice than the target, the spell succeeds. If he has less hit dice than the target, the spell reverses and targets the caster. Wild magic. The lawful plane weakens wild magic. Wild mages lose 2 levels of spellcasting ability while on the plane. This affects the number of spell slots, number of spells memorized, and the duration, range, and other factors of each wild magic spell, and wild surges cannot happen here. Elemental. Earth magics have no effect on the iron cubes of the plane. Air magic only works on the surface and fails while inside the cubes. The metal surface is affected by fire magic as if it were under the effects of a heat metal spell, with a diameter of 10 feet per level of the fire spell. Water magic works normally inside the cubes, but on the surface it only rusts the iron within a radius of 10 feet per level of spell. There are also a number of unique spells used by the generals of Acheron to prevent portals between cubes working and to create their own portals between cubes to escape a massacre. Spell keys. Each key is a rigidly defined ritual that requires precision to work, but the rituals themselves are meaningless sets of words, motions, and substances. Tradition, and the desire for order and precision, has given most of the spell keys names, such as the Blood Key for Magic Missile, the Grey Key for Invisibility, the Lesser Fire Key for Burning Hands, the Greater Fire Key for all elemental fire spells, and the Swords Key for Enchanted Weapon. Power keys. Power keys always resemble arcane marching orders or commissions complete with seals, ribbons, and florid handwriting. Lei Kung's power keys are sparks of lightning and claps of thunder that must be absorbed into the caster, releasing a little after each casting of a spell until they are all used up. Ladogor's power keys are items forged by the caster himself, then blessed by a priest of Ladogor and only function for their maker. Officers of the Orcs, Goblin, and Hobgoblin armies here are trusted with power keys, although they sell them for at least 1,000 gold pieces, since they can always claim they were lost in battle. There is no punishment for selling them, especially if the money is used to maintain control over mercenaries, but owning a stolen key is punishable by a huge fine and banishment from the ranks. In 3rd edition, Acheron has the mildly law-aligned trait, where chaotic characters suffer a -2 penalty on all charisma-based checks. In 5th edition, Acheron has the bloodlust trait. Acheron rewards a creature for harming other creatures by imbuing that creature with the strength to keep fighting. While on Acheron, a creature gains temporary hit points equal to half its hit point maximum whenever it reduces a hostile creature to 0 hit points. Inhabitants. Acheron is a place of constant war, where armies battle endlessly at the command of powers that thrive on strife and destruction. Quote, "Unlike the battlefields of Isgard, there's no honor, glory, or comradeship in Acheron. Only maneuvers and drills. Victory or death." End quote. The bottom 3 layers are abandoned, devastated wastelands, barren and sterile with nothing to support life. The 2 exceptions are the Grey Dwarves of Ladogor on Thuldanin and the Bladelings on Ocanthus. According to 1st edition, the main inhabitants on Acheron, or more specifically the first layer Avalas, are the Spirit Legions. These are the souls of soldiers who, quote, died in wars after losing sight of their objectives, so that war became an end in itself, end quote. 3rd edition says the petitioners wind up here often because they killed happily for a cause they didn't believe in, or were particularly brutal revolutionaries or terrorists. The petitioners of Acheron amass together in armies and fight endlessly. Leaders are uncommon, so their tactics follow those of the milieu the majority of the spirits come from. The most notable of these spirit legions are the armies of the Orcish petitioners from the Orcish pantheon and the Goblin and Hobgoblin petitioners of the Goblinoid pantheon, who both live on opposite sides of the same cube and endlessly fight each other. First edition states that any Spirit Legion member that dies in battle is returned to full strength within 24 hours. Second edition says the number of spirits that dwell on Acheron can never increase or decrease. Every soldier slain opens up a spot for your fellow warriors to enter the afterlife and join you in the battlefield. Because of this, no prisoners are taken. However, most believe this only applies to petitioners, so captured mercenaries are oftentimes spared so they can use their services. In addition to the Orc and Goblinoid armies, there are also rogue armies. Now, the ragtag groups of scavengers and regiments that have deserted and separated from their armies rarely last long, succumbing to madness, starvation, or total annihilation, but the armies of undead or constructs can be permanent fixtures on the plane. The most well-known of these is the army of Beretti the Necromancer King, a lich who wishes to rule an entire realm as a god. Mercy Killers, the faction that runs the prison of Sigil, have a strong presence here, offering food and safety in exchange for loyalty and a set period of service throughout the plains. They also preside over trials of people who have been arrested in a prison called the Wells of Vorkahan, where the guilty are left to rot in inky black pits dug into the iron cubes and lined with the bones of past perpetrators. Now, when it comes to what creatures are actually native to Acheron, it gets a little confusing. The Plains of Law box set has a sentence saying that Yugoloths and Rakshasa are the only true natives to Acheron. In 5th edition, Rakshasas were created by devils in Beator, and even in 2nd edition, they being created by devils was one possible origin among many, so it seems a little strange they are said to be native to Acheron here. Anyway, Rakshasa clans rule several hidden cubes throughout Acheron, each hidden by powerful illusions and led by a Maharaja. Now, the line on Yugoloths being native to Acheron is even weirder to me, because elsewhere in 2nd edition, it said that Yugoloths are native to Hades and then moved to Gehenna, becoming native on Gehenna. 1st edition says they're native to Gehenna, Hades, and Carcery, and then 5th edition says they are only native to Gehenna. I've never heard of them being native to Acheron other than this one single sentence, but if I had to guess, it's similar to Gehenna, where they moved there and they've been there long enough that they're now considered native. Overall, I would take this sentence with a grain of salt, because it says that Yugoloths and Rakshasa are the only true natives, but then in other parts of the same book, it says that Bladelings are also native to Acheron. Now, Bladelings are not originally from Acheron, but they have lived here so long that they are now considered native, so maybe that's why it wasn't included, but Yugoloths also aren't from Acheron, so using that logic, Yugoloths shouldn't have been included in that sentence either. This one single sentence really confused me, but I wouldn't worry too much about it. Anyway, Bladelings dwell on the 4th layer, Ocanthus, and are a race of living metallic creatures. Rumors say they used to be tieflings, but that's all the info I could find on their origin. Regardless, they are a separate race unto themselves. They were originally from somewhere else, we don't really know where, and they suffered lots of abuse and torment, and so they set out on the Great Ring in order to find an isolated place where they could be safe. They live in a city called Zoranor, ruled by priestesses and priests of their unknown gods. They are human-shaped, averaging 6 feet tall, with eyes said to, quote, glow like translucent chips of glacial ice tinged with purple, end quote. Their skin and bones are made of wood and ice, and protrude from their bodies like blades. Their blood is the color and consistency of oil. Through magical experimentation, they've developed an immunity to rust and metal corroding magics in order to not go extinct from the rust dragons. They are superstitious and xenophobic when in their own territory, killing anyone trespassing, but they are cordial while outside of it. Not much is known about their society because of this. It is believed blade golems can only be made from the spirits of bladelings. Quote, the golem's animating force is drawn from the dark netherworld the bladelings inhabit when they die, end quote. As far as I can tell, rust dragons are also natives of Acheron, haunting the hinterlands of the plain. Rust dragons are more like giant rust monsters than true dragons, having more insectoid features than draconic ones. Some say that rust dragons actually come from rust monsters. If a rust monster lives long enough, they find themselves on Avalas, gorge themselves on a feeding frenzy, then wrap themselves in a cocoon of rust. After hibernating for 3 years, they emerge as a rust dragon. Either way, they feed on the metal of the blocks themselves. However, it doesn't taste good to them, and they are constantly on the lookout for different metals to consume, particularly magical or specially forged metals. The armies of Avalas keep wooden and stone weapons on hand to combat rust dragons so that they don't lose their entire armory. Acheron is also home to enormous flocks of birds, including ravens, pigeons, sparrows, vultures, gulls, bloodhawks, and swallows. A lone solitary bird is a very bad omen in Acheron. Acheron are also native to Acheron. At least I think so, but as discussed earlier, what creatures are native to Acheron is a little confusing. However, most sources seem to put Acheron as only existing on Acheron, specifically the first 2 layers. Anyways, Acheron are giant, as in 15 feet tall, flightless birds. They are highly intelligent and lawful evil. They are tribalistic and highly organized. They are predators, but they also maintain a sense of justice, torturing those they believe to have wronged their kin. Other than the natives and usual inhabitants, Acheron also has many immigrants from other planes, such as imps, rust monsters, devils, and modrons. The modrons maintain mining colonies scattered throughout the first 2 layers. Most of the orc pantheon has their realm here on Acheron as of recently. Recently in a cosmological sense, that is. You see, the orc pantheon has traveled the planes looking for a lair to call their own, similar to an orcish Arvandor or Isgard. Before Acheron, they tried to make the Nine Hells and Gehenna their domain. Most of the goblinoid pantheon also dwells here, having been long established on the plane. The goblin and orc pantheons occupy opposite faces of the same large cube, called the Battle Cube, with Grumsh's wife, son, and first lieutenant, Lethig, Bogtrue, and Ilnival, respectively, occupying smaller blocks that orbit this one. Other gods that live here are Lei Kung, the god of thunder and vengeance in the celestial bureaucracy, the main pantheon of Kara-Tur on Toril, Ladagor, the god of the Duragar, and Bane, the Faerunian god of strife and tyranny. Layers. Acheron consists of 4 layers. Avalas, the plane of battles, Thuldanin, an enormous planar scrapyard, Tintibulus, a plane of perfect geometry and law so absolute that almost nothing can survive, and Ocanthus, a realm of razor blades that destroy almost everything they touch. The first layer is Avalas, the battle plains. It has the most block-shaped worlds and inhabitants out of all the layers. This is where great armies battle, both native and ones from other planes coming here to settle disputes on neutral ground. The cubes are black and hard as metal, and reverberate from the marching armies and the collisions with other cubes. The cubes collide with each other on average once a week, echoing loud booms throughout the plane. Cubes vary from city size to kingdom size, although older cubes can be smaller from being worn down by collisions. New cubes appear but are avoided as they have no edible food and have no craters or tunnels to take shelter in when it collides with another block. In first edition, it says the geographical features of Avalas consist of cone-shaped mountains and pits, the iron citadels of various armies, and the river Styx. Second edition keeps the Styx and the pits, but makes no mention of cone-shaped mountains, and specifically states structures are never built on the surface since they will inevitably get crushed by a colliding cube, the exception to this being mobile fortresses. The cold metal cubes sap heat from travelers, and snow, blizzards, and other ice storms will form on cubes that have drifted in the void far from other cubes for long periods of time. This indicates that no collision is imminent, since no cubes are nearby. Now, within Avalas, there are many documented locations, more so than any other layer. First up is the Blue Cube. Now, most denizens will tell you this about the Blue Cube. Quote, "A bluish cube surrounded by a pale halo of flickering light drifts through the void of Acheron. A powerful cube possessed by evil spirits chained to its iron core. Those who step onto the cube die instantly, consumed by lightning spirits. Some say the cube contains a conduit to the quasi-elemental plane of lightning. Others say it's simply a joke by some band of chaos-a-techs with nothing better to do." End quote. The only inhabitant of the blue cube is Teslor, a blue dragon with tattered wings from the abuse he has suffered, and he desperately wants to leave Acheron. He suffers total amnesia at the end of each day, so he etches into the blue cube notes to remind him of his history, his enemies, and his attempts at escape. He was brought here by Lei Kung from becoming too powerful in his realm of resounding thunder. A diet of only provender stones is not enough to stay healthy, so he is emaciated with visible ribs. He frequently gathers static charge into himself to power his lightning breath. This creates an opposite charge into the cube, giving it its pale blue glow. He has dug dozens of perfectly square tunnels and burrows inside the cube. Touching the cube, or when lightning arcs to another cube it's colliding with, causes sparks to fly, dealing 2d6 damage. Klangor, the divine realm of the goblinoid pantheon, Maglubiet and his two lieutenants, Kurgor Bayag and Nomad Gaia. It is a single great set of goblin and hobgoblin barracks built on and tunneled under one side of the battle cube, the same cube the orc realm lays. Towers and walls are built with mathematical precision to ensure the greatest damage on any invader. The realm is mostly a dusty, flat desert where plants grow slowly and wolves are bred sturdy and strong. The air is cold and dry, and the weak and infirm are thrown into the blizzards to die. Most burnable material has been stripped and used, so goblins eat rations over piles of burning wolf dung. The society is a rigid hierarchy. Towns are orderly and safe, roads are clean, and visitors are always higher on the hierarchy than the rank and file. But officers and officials love making strangers miserable just because they can. Criminals and lazy slaves are tortured to confess their crimes, and the chant is that there is a prison complex filled with thousands of goblins who failed their duties, only kept alive so as to prevent the law of conservation of spirits from bringing another orc petitioner into Acheron. The greatest goblin city here is Shetring, the home of Kurgor Bayag. It spans two sides of the river Lorfang, with 5 stone bridges crossing it. The river rises from a spring, circles the city, and plunges into the cube. This waterfall is where many sacrifices are offered to Maglubiet, since he is said to live at the bottom. The Hobgoblin capital is Red Spike, built on top of, inside of, and on the exterior of a rust-red granite mesa, so the entire town looks like a gigantic tower with 2 enormous ramps spiraling the outside to the top. Other than those two, there is Grashmog, the heart of battle, the warriors' retreat and sacred place of Maglubiet's mysteries. The priests here rule every great army, and it is home to the elite warriors called Steelbiters, dragoons that ride winter wolves and answer only to Maglubiet's proxies. Everyone in Klangor knows their place, and stepping out of line gets one killed. Laws regulate what colors each rank can wear, and visitors cannot wear red, white, or black, and only officers can wear cloaks. Wearing the wrong color gets you fined, and if you can't pay the fine, you're enslaved or executed. Visitors also must wear jade bracelets to identify them as visitors. Officers can say the command phrase, Maglubiet compels you, to cast Hold Person on the wearer, and they do not work against goblinoids. Klangor has enough surplus to sell supplies to travelers for a hefty fee. The quality isn't great, but you know you won't get scammed since everything is measured and weighed precisely due to strict regulation. The goblins make some of the finest composite bows, albeit small ones, and breed the finest riding wolves. The hobgoblins produce unbreakable shackles and excellent instruments of torture. Next up is Nishrek, the divine realm of most of the orcish pantheon, Grumsh, Bogtru, Ilnavul, and Luthik. According to one page in the 2nd edition Planes of Law box set, it says that Grumsh rules 3 of the cube's sides, Bogtru 2, Ilnavul 1, and Luthik dwells within the heart of the cube, sending out plagues to the surface. Now, that is 6 faces, implying that they control an entire cube. However, earlier in the same book, it said that Klangor and Nishrek were on the same cube, the battle cube, just on different faces, and that they each only controlled one face. The description of how Nishrek is structured later on the exact same page, and how it's structured on the map that you're looking at right now, describes the whole realm as if it composed only one face of a cube. 1st edition also says that the Orc and Goblin realms are on the same cube. 3rd edition does say that they were on the same cube, but then they eventually separated the cube into 2 separate cubes, but that would have happened later on in 3rd edition, not in 2nd edition. So there's one sentence saying that the Orc Pantheon controls an entire cube is a mistake, and that is not consistent with anything else from the same edition. However, it is true in 3rd edition. Anyways, Nishrek is where the orc armies dwell. It is composed of trenches where the lowest ranking orcs live in continuously growing towns built within the trenches using whatever material they could find. Ruined helmets, goblin bones, beams from siege machinery, etc. 3rd edition makes a point to state that the arrangement of the trenches and tunnels of Nishrek are chaotic and that the mildly law-aligned trait of the plane is negated while here. This is because 3rd edition decided to make Gruumsh chaotic evil instead of lawful evil like he used to be in previous editions. They also made orcs go from lawful evil to chaotic evil, and goblins go from lawful evil to neutral evil. I don't really know why they did that, but if you're wondering why these chaotic evil creatures have an afterlife on a lawful plane, that's because they used to be lawful. Anyway, ghouls and other deadly creatures dwell within the lower passages of the trenches, and they devour orcs who wander alone. Higher ranking orcs have their own quarters in each town, broken up into 4 different barracks. One for archers, one for spearmen, one for shaman, and one for siege engineers. These 4 surround the central eye and pyramid of Gruumsh's great temple in each city. Each town in Nishrek is more like barracks or field camps than a real town, and each is ruled by one of these 6 great clans of orcs. However, there are hundreds of lesser tribes that follow these clans. The realm is broken up into quarters by a cross-shaped trench, along with 4 trenches to protect its sides. Each quarter has a town, the trenches have a town, and the center of the realm has a town built on top of an enormous pile of bones. Gruumsh's towns are the Rotting Eye, the White Hand, and the Three Fang. Bogtru's towns are Iron Fist and Broken Skull, and Ilnavul's town is Blood Armor. Each town is ruled by a great clan of the same name. Slaves are freely available in Nishrek, as are weapons, armor, and materials for war. They are generally of inferior quality or plundered from goblins. Orcs and their allies, Orogs, Ogres, and sometimes Yugoloths, are the only things tolerated here, thwarting magical attempts to affect them. While here in Nishrek, they always succeed on saving throws, damage from combat spells is always the minimum, and spells with variable durations used against them always last the minimum time. Why goblins don't get this ability, I have no clue, but I guess orcs are special. Reykdemerk. A cube where the river Styx flows on all 6 sides. The river leads to a different plane depending on what side it's on, and each side takes on characteristics of the plane it's heading. The side that leads to Beator is an orderly cesspool of logic, and the Abyss side is disorganized, chaotic, and crowded with viper trees and other hostile flora. The other 4 sides lead to Carcery, Gehenna, Limbo, and Pandemonium. The river Styx here is always 330 feet deep and wide at all points. Within Reykdemerk is Mesk, a small fishing town of 1,000 people located in a rusting valley on the edge of 2 of the sides. They fish for slimy fish-like creatures and sell their metallic scales to other cubes for things they can't get in Mesk. Any disputes are settled by the magically powerful leader, Indal, who almost always executes one of the 2 arguing parties in order to keep the peace. Next on Avalas, we have Istvarhan, which is a Hassatorium, acting as a mobile town fortress. Like all Hassatoriums, it is, quote, an enormous forest of half-living, half-iron walls, with watchtowers and a large inner courtyard constantly surrounded by the cries of the carrier slaves. There's no privacy anywhere, for the walls themselves have eyes and ears, end quote. It is circular in shape, with a central tower acting as an axle, allowing it to spin so it can move around. During battles, it can spin to knock down ladders, and then it also momentarily disorients flyers who are landing on it, making sieging it nearly impossible. Every pound slows Istvarhan, so supplies, including food and water, are always kept extremely low. Travelers may be given asylum within its walls in exchange for food, water, or strong drink. Deserters, thieves, and spies are all punished by being put into the walls themselves, a process with no confirmed way of reversing. Spirits like Rakshasa and metal beings like the Bladelings cannot be fused with the walls and are destroyed instead. Resounding Thunder, the divine realm of Lei Kung, the Thunder God. A minor god of thunder and vengeance and a member of the Celestial Empire, the dominant pantheon in Kara-Tur, a continent on Toril in the Forgotten Realms setting. He was often tasked by the Pantheon to punish those who committed crimes not governed by mortal law. Resounding Thunder is not on a metal block, but a floating cloud island that goes where Lei Kung pleases, announcing its arrival with thunder. Because Lei Kung is the only god on Acheron not devoted to war, Resounding Thunder is a sanctuary for traitors, deserters, and cowards. Quote, "He rules absolutely and without question, and his decrees are instantly turned into actions by his servitors and proxies. The realm revolves around his slightest whim, with fleet messengers and heralds to spread his decrees, and silent and efficient bureaucracy to make his word into deed." End quote. The petitioners of Lei Kung are bounty hunters, mercenaries, executioners, and others who serve the cause of retribution. Unlike most realms' petitioners, they sometimes leave the realm to spy on others' misdeeds or strike against Lei Kung's enemies, believing that those who die seeking vengeance are instantly unified with their god. In 1st edition, the island only had a small temple and a quarters for him to rest, but as always, 2nd edition goes into much more detail. This dark, cloudy domain includes a fortress, scriptorium, several mile-long archives, and the Firecracker Palace in the center, although it is also called the Exploding Palace due to Lei Kung's temper. The palace is a bright red, yellow, and blue monstrosity of loud noises and echoes where all transgressors against the celestial bureaucracy are punished. It is surrounded by the Hall of Retribution and the 9-League Prison. The 9-League Prison is a town devoted to keeping its inhabitants prisoners and keeping track of their day of judgment. An entire wall of the town is dedicated to the bounties of criminals. Those who collect said bounties are paid by the clerks of the Jade Corridor in the Hall of Retribution. The realm is also dotted with prisons, execution grounds, and other places of punishment. A bell tower pierces the sky and storm clouds that circle it, and both fill the realm with loud, furious booms. The streets are paved with dark red brick and lit by bright green lanterns. Houses are roofed with green and black tiles, and each doorway is guarded by statues of baked black pottery. There are 3 main towns within Resounding Thunder. Nihao is the largest town of petitioners, a gate town leading to Mechanus. I don't know why they chose the Chinese word for hello for the name of this town, but whatever, moving on. 8 Devils Laughing is a gate town leading to Beator, and Blackwater is a lake town that grows most of the realm's food and where many proxies stay when they're not out getting vengeance. All lightning and electrical spells in Resounding Thunder produce a rolling thunder when first cast that acts as a thunderstaff spell within 30 yards. The clap of this thunder deafens and stuns all creatures within 20 feet who fail a saving throw versus spell, ruins spellcasting, and makes most nearby creatures easy prey for possession by vengeful spirits, meaning they get a -4 to saving throws against the attacks of haunts, poltergeists, and the like. All wrongdoers slain here become petitioners serving Lei Kung, tasked with bringing more wrongdoers before the Hall of Retribution for justice. Their spirits cannot be released by resurrection or raise dead spells except by Lei Kung's permission, which is easily granted, but he always demands that the reborn spirit return a powerful wrongdoer to his halls as payment. Failure means his servants will pursue them to the ends of the multiverse. Noisemakers of every kind, such as gongs and firecrackers, are available to purchase throughout Resounding Thunder. The realm is also known for creating magic items that protect against thunder and lightning, staves of thunder and lightning, and permanent thunder staves. However, these are only sold to worshippers, earnest converts, or those with enough money to overcome all objections. Next in Avalas, we have Vorkahan, the City of Fumes. This is the home of the Mercy Killers, and it exists within a pocket dimension. It is described as, quote, a city of gleaming metal walls, welded, fused, and bolted together. Its streets are a perfect grid of shining titanium with gutters of lead. Its gleaming brilliance is partly due to the fumes that clog its streets from the city's fountains, which glow with gurgling, purifying acid, end quote. The fumes of the city are equal to a stinking cloud spell, causing retching, coughing, and watery eyes, and one is allowed a saving throw once a day to resist this. The Mercy Killers seem to be completely unaffected by the smog. The winds are strongest at the corners of the city, where the gravity shifts 90 degrees as you get to a different side of the cube. Crossing another corner of a cube requires a dexterity check, or you lose your footing and fly off into the void. All noise in the city is loud. Footsteps echo, and the slamming of doors sound like thunder. All attempts to hear noise suffer a -20% penalty because of the echoes and distractions. The Mercy Killer's actual headquarters within the town is the Hall of Dark Gables. The entire complex is made of steel and oily black stone set with magically burning adamantite spikes, its walls topped by rolling tubes of steel and towers set with enormous weather vanes, likewise sputtering and flaring with magical flame called witchfire. These bluish-green witch flames decorate every fence post, and they are too bright to stare at directly. As punishment for crimes, sometimes people are forced to stare at them until their eyes fail. Then, the blindness is made permanent with necromantic magic. Vorkahan is small, well-maintained, and extremely secure. Intruders and rule breakers are punished aggressively. Passwords and countersigns are expected at every bridge and gatehouse, and the entire town is constantly under watch of the Eye of Rigolis, an impossibly tall tower of braided iron. It has a ridiculous amount of lookouts built onto it, making it seem like it should collapse under its weight, but never does, and it records the actions of every citizen of the city. In Vorkahan, one can buy excellent marching boots, bedrolls, tents, whetstones, banners, drums, trumpets, armor, and anything oriented toward warfare and combat. Excellent blades, lights, and mounts are also available, but only to faction members. The Black Bastion, the divine realm of Bane, the god of strife and tyranny in the Faerunian pantheon of the Forgotten Realms. Now, the descriptions for this place are going to be from the 3rd edition book Player's Guide to Faerun. Technically, that book was using the World Tree cosmology, because that's the cosmology that Forgotten Realms products used in 3rd edition, and not the Great Wheel. So this Black Bastion being described is actually not located on Acheron, since Acheron didn't exist in that cosmological model, but the Barrens of Doom and Despair, which was its own plane unique to the World Tree cosmology of 3rd edition, and the World Axis cosmology of 4th edition. However, in 2nd edition, Bane's Divine Realm is said to be the Black Bastion, so I'm going to assume that they are the same place. The realm was never described in 2nd edition since Bane was dead in 2e, so I guess they didn't see a reason to flesh out his realm. Anyways, the Black Bastion is described as a towering edifice of adamantine, obsidian, ebony, and jet, sucking the light out of the sky and casting shadows all around it. Here he amasses soldiers from across the plains, particularly devils. Zigguroxus, the realm of the Untheric pantheon of the Forgotten Realms. Most of the Untheric pantheon was killed or left after the Orkgate Wars, so it was only the home of Gilgeim for a long time. When Gilgeim was killed in 1358 DR, the realm vanished, but in 1487 Enlil rebuilt it. It was described as a vast mountain under a starry night, and its peak was always covered in mist. The last location we have on Avalas is Scourgehold, the divine realm of Hextor, the Greyhawk deity of tyranny and self-proclaimed champion of evil. It is a huge fortress of iron and stone, and in the center lies a great coliseum of beaten bronze and glass where soldiers train for war. Thuldanin, the second layer of Acheron. Thuldanin is the scrap heap of the plane. The blocks of the layer are hollow and indented with pits, which lead down to the interiors of the blocks, which are filled with thousands of scrap devices. Buildings, great ships, enormous weapons, steam-powered vehicles, flying devices, etc. All sorts of inventions can be found here, but they are all inoperative and have turned to iron-like stone from the long exposure to the layer. In 1st edition, there are no natives to Thuldanin, only people from Avalas looking for something to tip a war to their advantage. In 2nd edition, this is still true except for the hidden realm of the Duergar. Like Avalas, Thuldanin is prone to hail and ice storms, but most never see it since they spend the whole time in the caverns. In 1st edition, for every day spent searching, there is a 0.1% chance a player character finds something useful, and even then it might not work when returning to the prime material plane. For each month a non-magical item spins here, a saving throw versus crushing blow must be made or it turns to stone. The same rule applies in 2nd edition, except that magical items also must make a saving throw, although they get a bonus equal to their attack bonus. Petrified items lose all magical properties. In 3rd edition, it's similar, but even creatures are affected. Every 30 days a creature or object spins on Thuldanin has a 1% chance of being turned to stone. If a creature is affected, they may avoid it with a DC 18 Fortitude save. This can only be reversed with a Wish or Miracle spell. There are only 2 known locations on Thuldanin. The first is Hammergrim, the divine realm of Ladagor, the god of the Duergar, also known as the Grey Dwarves. This is a gloomy realm, not just because of the natural pessimism the Duergar possess, but because they've been losing their battle against Shirei incursions for years. Hammergrim is a, quote, realm of grey light, grey stone, and somber clothing. Even the festivals are grim, with much sonorous chanting and invocations against the threats of Acheron's creatures, end quote. Their towns are built for defense. There's no windows on the ground floor, very few doors, and most entrances are accessed through deep tunnels or long sets of stairs surrounded by open courtyards that allow for easy crossbow fire. The realm rings with the sounds of hammers slamming on anvils throughout the day, but come nightfall, the bells and gongs ring to announce the end of the workday, and everything falls silent. Dwarves that work through the night risk being captured by Rakshasas who steal petitioners to become slaves in their mansions, so they say. The Duergar only speak their own language, and they don't bother learning the languages of others. There are several towns in Hammergrim. Coldember is where most forgecraft and ironmongery is done and is the best place for custom-made weapons. Hope Glimmer has the largest temple and is the site of pilgrimages and miracles. Deathnell is closest to the realm's borders, and so it has the strongest defenses. Forge Gloom is the site of the Court of Memory, where the dwarf chieftain rules from. This town is always damp and cold, and many here die of exposure and disease. The Court of Memory's true name is the Court of the Idiot King. See, this is where the Duergar chieftain rules, but he is aided by the spirits of his ancestors and predecessors that possess him, giving him their abilities and skills. One day the chieftain might be a priest, the next an illusionist, and the next a master strategist. However, these constant possessions slowly destroy his strength and will, until eventually he becomes completely useless when not possessed, thus becoming the Idiot King. Some believe the Darrow god Dorinka caused this curse. Most of these spirits are ancestors or predecessors, but you have a couple stranger spirits like 77, a rogue pentadrone, or Scab, a homuncula. The court is a single huge chamber with richly carved columns and arches lining a walkway on the edges. A giant block of dark serpentine sits in the center, with stairs to the top carved on the side. Only the High Chieftain ever climbs these. As he climbs up, the spirits possess him. Then, when his work is finished, he descends the stairs back into drooling madness. The Citadel of Thought is a hall located in Hammergrim's courtyard, and is the divine realm of Deep Dwera, the Duergar demigoddess of conquest, expansion, and psionics. Underneath the citadel lie vast fiery catacombs where Ember guards torture Duergar that had offended Deep Dwera. In addition to the Duergar petitioners, Hammergrim also has some gnome worshippers of Erdlin that arrive here in the form of moles with adamantine claws. Crafting enchanted weapons is easier in Hammergrim, but only for dwarves. Dwarves can make enchanted weapons in 1 month as long as they have a forge and the proper tools, but they can only do this once a year. The dwarf makes a weaponsmith's check at -4 penalty. On a success, the weapon is enchanted with a +1. Each subsequent check has another -4 penalty, but adds an additional +1 bonus. Magical weapons of every kind can be bought in Hammergrim. They never sell to primes or dwarves, and rarely to chaotic or good characters. When they do, they double or triple their prices. Dwarven favorites like crossbows, hammers, axes, and picks cost twice their experience point value in gold and are easily purchased. Anything else must be custom ordered and cost 10 times their experience point value in gold. The last location on Thuldanin are the Mines of Marcelin. This cube of Thuldanin is a well-known excavated mining site. It is filled with inventions, spaceships, gargantuan weapons, steam-driven carriages, etc., that have turned to solid lumps of black iron. Although every other mention of this in the book says that it turns into iron like stone, but it's not true iron, it is stone, so I think the fact that it calls it iron is a mistake here. But anyways, the mines seem to generate new inventions every day, and no one is sure where they come from. The Athar and Sigil believe that every disintegrate spell simply dumps the target here. Down here, there are thousands of strip mines, bottomless shafts, and mounds of squarish ironstone tailings. Most of the mine shafts are dead ends, but some lead to the giant caverns within the hollow cube that hold all the cast-offs of the universe. These mines are known for yielding massive amounts of rich treasure. The area is overseen by the rust dragon Coriosis, who hates anyone who tries to steal from her mines, and she also hates the Modrons, who organize everything into neat piles. She has a sort of alliance with the Mercy Killers, who patrol the area for her. Anything that enters the mines is turned into iron like stone. Objects must save versus crushing blow weekly, and creatures must save versus petrification monthly. Magic items turned to stone lose all magical properties and can only be restored by a dispel magic effective against 30th level magic, so the caster would need to be level 20 to even have a chance at dispelling it. Creatures turned to stone can only be restored by a crystal brittle spell, followed by a stone to flesh spell. Alternatively, you can just use a wish spell. Rust dragons, bladelings, Yugoloths, and other creatures native to Acheron are immune to this effect. The mines are also home to powerful scavengers, ready to jump anyone attempting to come here and claim anything for themselves. Tintibulus, the third layer of Acheron. The blocks here are not just cubes, but also 8-sided shapes, 12-sided shapes, and so on. It's basically just sets of D&D dice. The blocks are solid throughout and are made of gray volcanic stone, coated in inches of ash and dust. When collisions occur on Tintibulus, the stone fractures on natural fault lines, creating huge hexagons of various dimensions on the surfaces of the blocks. However, in 3rd edition, these fractures cause the solids to actually split into 2 separate, smaller shapes, and the bell-like ringing of these collisions causes a -4 penalty to listen checks. There is no native life here on the 3rd layer, but its emptiness attracts magical researchers so that they may conduct experiments in solitude. Tintibulus has no real weather, just constant cool temperature. There's only one location I could find on Tintibulus, and that is the Hopping Tower. It is a tower made of moss-covered stone, cemented with a magic-resistant purple mortar and capped with a glass dome. It has 5 round doors along its spiral pattern, each guarded by a guardian Yugoloth. According to the text, the tower does not rest on solid ground. However, according to this map of Acheron, it seems to be on a block, so I'm not really sure what it meant by that. Either way, it floats in the center of an extremely dangerous region called the Sea of Stones, also known as the Chiming Stones because of the sound the stones make, and these stones constantly collide and crush travelers. A mad mage called the Hopping Mage lives here. He was once a user of wild magic and is now a priest of an unknown god of travelers, theft, and darkness. The Hopping Mage's name is Lysander, a former member of the Sensates whose life changed when he put on a helm of opposite alignment. Many believe you need to offer a sacrifice to his god to safely access the tower, but truthfully, the Hopping Mage uses a spell to bypass the stones. The tower constantly moves, halting only for a moment at the top and bottom of its arc, and getting on it requires a successful aerial riding skill check for adventurers with flying mounts, or a dexterity check for those flying under magical power. Failure means the tower switches directions and brushes up against the adventurer for 1d6 times 1d6 damage. The constant rise and fall of the tower makes many queasy, requiring a constitution check to avoid being nauseated while on the tower. While nauseated from this, they suffer a 25% chance of spell failure, a -4 penalty to all attack rolls, and a -3 penalty to dexterity. This can be neutralized with any cure spell. Ocanthus, the 4th and final layer of Acheron. Here, there are no blocks to stand on, only razor-thin squares of hard black material moving through the snow-white void. Some are only inches wide, while others are miles across. These shards are made of black ice. Each collision between them shatters them into progressively smaller shards, then tiny needles, and finally dust. Some believe that at the bottom of Ocanthus is a single sheet of infinite black ice, and the shards of the layer are chipped off from that. Lysander, the Hopping Mage, believes this sheet is either the source or final destination of the river Styx, and all the memories drained by it are frozen inside, accessible only by a simple knock spell. Some of the plates are sturdy enough to support people and structures, however, living here is way too dangerous for anyone to try. The razors slice through the darkness like knives. In 1st edition, being struck by one dealt 1d10 d10s of damage. In 2nd edition, they were treated as Vorpal blades, so they had a Thaco 11, they ignored armor, however dexterity bonuses applied, they dealt somewhere between 1d6 and 4d8 damage, and they beheaded targets on a roll of 20. In 3rd edition, any creature not protected by an extremely durable structure is subjected to a great sword attack every round, plus 10 to the attack roll, dealing 2d6 points of damage, ignoring damage reduction. The weather on Ocanthus consists only of icy cold air and blizzards of these razor-sharp shards of black ice. The only things that live here are the Bladelings and their city of Zoranor. So, let's talk about it. Zoranor, the City of Shadows. Zoranor is surrounded by a spherical shell of wood called the Blood Forest that protects the city from the flying shards of ice. The entire exterior of the sphere is embedded with these shards. The Bladelings worship the Blood Forest as a lesser god they call Haristi, the Grey Whisper. It is Haristi's duty to protect the city and give birth to new Bladelings. They say the razors embedded in the Blood Forest are infused with life energy and then turned into new Bladelings. Occasionally, a giant shard hits the Blood Forest hard enough to pierce the shell and destroy a section of the city, although it fills the gap with itself, making this less frequent as time goes on. Other times, tiny shards make it through openings in the forest and soar through the city until it hits a surface. The Bladelings call these dark birds. A creature struck by one takes 1d12 d6s of damage, and it is considered a bad omen. Most perform a ritual purification afterwards, which involves an acid bath and going through a red-hot, coal-lined sauna tunnel. The city itself consists of the gray, dead flesh of the Blood Forest hanging from supporting beams of the black ice shards. Buildings bend and sway whenever the city is struck by the razors, and the roofs are made from the unmelting black ice. The race was long tormented and were led on a journey around the Great Ring by their current priest king, Ironfeather, to find a safe, isolated home. Through a huge cost of magic and lives, Zoranor was built. Ironfeather does not trust strangers to not mess up their safe home, so he imposes a policy of xenophobia and isolation in order to keep the city's location secret. The Bladelings have a druid-like religion which they are fanatical about. They are frequently, quote, offering sacrifices impaled on shards of black ice and festooned with iron scales shed by the Bladelings in an attempt to create more of their own kind, end quote. The city is led by a priest king and prophet who is protected by an honor guard called the Sable Legion. Their militia is an elite corps called the Blackwater Guards, led by a protector general and functioning as a city-wide secret police and army. The cult is led by a high priestess who has her own honor guard of woodsmen within the Blood Forest called the Shadowbrook Rangers. The city basically has zero services since outsiders are so infrequently allowed in, and most that are sacrificed. A Bladeling named Ghostwalker leads travelers around the town for a hefty fee, servants summoned from other planes are available to purchase, and so are spell components for summoning spells. The only other location in Ocanthus I could find is Cabal Macabre, the divine realm of Wee-Jas, the witch goddess of death and magic in the Greyhawk campaign setting. It is built on the surface of the boundary of solid black ice at the bottom of the layer. It is a crystalline castle glowing with pale light, and the outer walls are crenellated with ice sculptures depicting skeletons of every race of the multiverse. Inside, she keeps spellcasters that she has kidnapped from across the planes and constantly tests them. Failing the test results in death at her hands, and no one has yet to pass. She spends much of her time walking on the boundary, looking for memories of lost magic and death, and within a quarter mile of anywhere she walks, the Bladestorms of Ocanthus are halted. And that is all the information I could find on Acheron, the Plane of Constant War. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this video. Remember to subscribe for more D&D related content, and if you have any questions you'd like to ask or just tidbits of information you want to add, feel free to comment. I love reading your comments and I try to respond to all questions.